Afternoon, everybody. Firstly, quick show of hands, who's going to go and watch Steve Wozniak straight after this? Awesome. So that means that when I go back home, I can tell everyone that I was the warm-up act for Steve Wozniak at a conference in Lithuania. So thanks very much for that. Clearly, I'm not going to tell them that I was on a slightly smaller stage than he was. So it's great to be here. I'm going to start today by just sharing a short story, a personal experience that I had a couple of years ago that really, I think, epitomizes a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today in terms of Google Maps. So 2 years ago, just after I joined Google, I live in Dubai at the time with my fiance. We were planning to get married, and we were going to get married in the UK. So we flew into London Heathrow, and we were stood at the baggage reclaim belt to collect our bags. And in our relationship, Liz is very much the organizer and the planner. So she books everything a year in advance, all of the hotels where we're staying. I'm very much a last-minute person, wouldn't book anything if I could, just rock up and see what happens. So we stood at the baggage reclaim belt, and Liz says, obviously she grew up in Belgium, so she doesn't know London very well. How are we going to get to the hotel? So I reply, well, you booked the hotel, have you not figured out how we're going to get there? She turned back and said, don't you work for Google and work for Google Maps? Surely you should know how we get to the hotel. So I said, okay, that's fair enough. Am I at least allowed to know what the name of the hotel is? Because, come on, I've got no idea where we're going. So she said, yep, it's called a base to stay, and it's in Kensington. So I pull out my mobile phone, I go to Google, and I type in base to stay Kensington. And the very first result that comes back is a map with a pin on that map showing the exact location of the hotel. So that's pretty cool. And then it has two buttons underneath the map. One says, call the hotel. The other one says, directions. I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Clearly, if I'm searching for a hotel, there's probably two things that I want to do. I want to call them, or I want to find out how to get there. So I was pretty impressed by that. So clearly, at the airport waiting for our bags, I hit the directions button. It launches Google Maps, and it gives me options to try and find, obviously, driving distance by public transit and by walking. Clearly, walking wasn't going to be a very good option. So I click the driving directions, and Liz's preference was to get a taxi because she's not a big fan of public transport in London. If any of you have got the rush hour tube in London, I can wholeheartedly agree with that. But Google Maps then told me, literally one click of a button, that actually it's going to take me over an hour and a half to get from the airport to the hotel because the traffic is really bad using real-time traffic information. So I then check the public transit options, and it says, well, actually, that's going to take you about 50 minutes. Normally, it takes 40 minutes, but one of the tube lines, there's a delay, so you need to take this tube, and this is how you get there. And that literally all happened in the space of 15 seconds. And although I just joined Google, I've spent my whole career in geography and digital maps, the power of the simplicity and the complexity of what I had done really, really amazed me. So obviously we then decide to do public transit against Liz's wishes, but we arrive at the hotel after 15 minutes. But the other thing is we arrive there in a great mood, in a great spirit, right? Because we've just saved like half an hour of our time and saved a lot of money because taxis, black cabs in London, especially when you're stuck in traffic, are hugely expensive. And when we got to the hotel and we checked in, other people were there complaining, oh, we've just been stuck in traffic for an hour, it was a nightmare. And Liz and I were there, sort of laughing and sniggering, going, yeah, we missed all the traffic, we missed all of that. And really, that for me was a light bulb, a magic moment of just the power of maps and location-based technologies in the fact that it saved us a lot of time, it saved us a lot of money, but also the fact that the business that we were trying to find had a digital location strategy to enable their information to be found by me as a consumer and enable me to have a really good experience. So hopefully that sets the frame of what I'm going to talk about today, which is a bit about the history of Google Maps, kind of why Google's interested in maps, the benefits that mapping technologies and location-based services have on the economy, but then a bit more about how businesses can benefit from using the Google Maps platform and a few examples of how businesses have really helped to increase their bottom line profits and do more interesting things and engage with their customers. And then I'll finish off by just talking a little bit about the future and some of the things that we as Google are working on. So the first thing, back a number of years ago, a lot of people sort of asked, why does Google have Google Maps and Google Earth? Google's a search business. Well, actually, early on in the days of Google Maps and Google Earth, Google noticed that actually about 1 in 3 searches were looking for something somewhere. Now, again, if you reference that story I told you at the start, I was looking for a hotel. Chances are I want to know where it is and I want to know how to get there. So Google quickly realized this and they spent some money acquiring a couple of different companies. The company that then became Google Maps and a company called Keyhole that became Google Earth. And then back in 2005, we launched Google Maps. And this actually was the first launch of Google Maps back in 2005. Now, clearly, if you lived anywhere outside the UK and the US, you weren't particularly happy. But luckily, at the time, I lived in the UK, and this was actually kind of a paradigm shift in the way that mapping technologies were working at the time. I don't know if you remember using some of the mapping services back then, but you had these kind of 7 boxes you had to fill in with information. You click show me a map, you would wait 10 seconds, and then the map would load in the page. And Google came along with Google's computing infrastructure and gave a really simple experience, but also because we pre-rendered the map tiles at that time, we can actually deliver maps a lot more quickly. And we delivered this very interactive, slippy maps experience. And it got a lot of interest in the market, and people started using it. Not only did consumers started using it, but actually developers started then to overlay their own information on top. Property portals were saying, hey, here's a really cool base map. I can overlay my information on top of it. So Google then shortly released an API to allow developers to get access to this technology. So you can embed Google Maps within your website or within your software application to really leverage off the power of the base maps that we provide, but also a number of web services like geocoding. So if you have the addresses of your customers, you can automatically just put those on a map. We expose the directions through an API so you can hook that into your applications. And also adding things like Places API. So this is an example of developers getting programmatic access to Google's places of interest listings. So we did a lot of things through APIs, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the APIs later. So then what we did back in 2006, we actually launched Google Maps for mobile in Java. Now, if you remember back in 2006, this was before iPhones, this was before Android, this was when BlackBerrys were the king of the smartphone world. But Google cottoned on very early that having a mobile maps experience, it was going to be hugely important because these devices are location aware. They know obviously where you are, so the ability to have maps and location-based services were key. So we started our mobile efforts very, very early. Street View. 2007, just launched in just 5 US cities. And I remember the day that Street View launched, and I kind of used this experience. And my reaction was, this is awesome, but what is this crazy company doing with Street View? And I think the reaction of the market was, wow, this is interesting, but where is this going? And kind of fast forward to now and think how Street View has become an every part of our everyday lives. I used it before I came here to Lithuania. I wanted to check out Vilnius, see what the city was like. So then also in 2007, we launched traffic information. If my pointer is working. There we go. Obviously, I need to stay on this side. Sorry, guys. So 2007, we launched traffic information, which allows users to get real-time access to traffic information. And again, the story I told you at the start, I use this to save myself probably about £50 in taxi fares being sat in traffic. And again, exposing this through APIs so developers and business can get access to this technology. Then we went one step further in 2009 and launched Google Maps navigation. And again, we just launched in a handful of countries. But again, it got a lot of press and a lot of media coverage because, again, with the growth of iOS, with the growth of Android, of all these mobile platforms, having these apps freely available for you guys as consumers or as businesses to use actually has a huge impact on the economy, a huge impact on your day-to-day lives, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So if we fast forward a little bit to today, and just see over a few years the huge increase in expansion. Now we have driving directions in 187 countries around the world. And obviously we want to have every single country possible having driving directions and navigation. But we also see Google Maps in lots of interesting places. This is an example of a Tesla Model S that has this beautiful 19-inch touchscreen display. with Google Maps and Street View and Google Places embedded. So people who are driving these cars have a very amazing end-user experience. But again, Street View, if you think just back in 2007, we launched for just 5 cities. Now we have over 3,000 cities on every single continent, including Antarctica, in Google Maps and Google Earth, available for you guys to go and explore the world. But obviously, the Street View cars weren't quite enough, so we started putting Street View on trains, Street View on trikes. I think the mayor of Vilnius rode one of the trikes when we did the Street View here in Lithuania. But also trekker Street Views. This is from, we captured the walking along the Grand Canyon. So if any of you haven't checked that out, or you haven't been to the Grand Canyon, even if you have been to the Grand Canyon, you can literally, from the comfort of your own seat, explore one of the most amazing natural landscapes in the world. But again, even that wasn't enough for us as Google. So we started putting Street View on skidoos and mapping a lot of the ski resorts because, hey, if you want to go skiing, you want to check out the runs before you go. Even that wasn't quite enough. We started doing Street View underwater. So the Great Barrier Reef in Australia now, you can actually go and explore all of the amazing coral reefs and all of the amazing marine landscape through Street View. But last but by no means least, and actually the most important, Street View here in Lithuania, which we launched a couple of weeks ago. And literally, Google, our mission is to map every single square inch of the planet. That is what we would love to do, and to try and make all of this amazing data and applications available to you guys as consumers, but also to you guys as businesses to help you leverage the power of a lot of the cool stuff that we're doing. I now just want to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we're trying to push the boundaries about how we deliver some of these experiences and Google Now. Just out of interest, quick show of hands, how many of you guys know about Google Now? Okay, cool. So Google Now, when it launched, the whole principle behind Google Now is, at the moment, a lot of Google services are very reactive. So you go to google.com, you search for something, we give you a response. You go to Google Maps, you search for something, we give you a response. Google Now is really trying to be much more proactive, taking the information that Google knows about you to try and give you guys an amazing experience and to try and help you save time, save money, save effort, and take a lot of the complexity away from you. So let me just share with you some experiences that I had a couple of days ago when I was traveling to Lithuania with Google Now. So the first thing, this was early start for me, 5:30 in the morning in the taxi on the way to the airport. And you get sort of notifications, and the first thing it knows is the places that I commonly visit. So obviously I spend a lot of time at work, and it tells me in current traffic it's going to take you 20 minutes to get to work. Okay, that's quite interesting. More importantly, it's hooked into my Gmail inbox, and it knows that I booked a flight with Emirates to fly via Warsaw, because I can't fly direct, unfortunately, yet to Lithuania. So because of that, it checks the status of that flight, and it actually tells me that the flight, you can't see it, it's on time, basically which terminal it leaves from and what time it arrives in Warsaw. It then gives me a button to launch navigation, obviously if I'm driving, and it tells me again that it's 17 minutes to get to the airport in current traffic, and also a link to view the email, because when I get to the airport, chances are they'll need some sort of confirmation number. And again, all of this is provided to me without me doing anything. It's just notifications that come to me on my phone. It also knows, because again, in my inbox, I have a notification from the Radisson, because that's the hotel I'm staying at. And again, so I can click a map, I can see that, I can dive into Street View, and also get my confirmation number. More importantly, though, Google knows, because I'm logged into Google Search, that I read a lot of Manchester United articles, because I'm a huge Manchester United fan. So it actually tells me when Manchester United are playing. So this was on Wednesday. We had a game against West Ham. And it also tells me the time of the kickoff based on my current time zone. So at this time, I was still in Dubai. So it's saying it was going to be kickoff at 11:15. But I've also set it up to also pull in feeds from Manchester City, although I clearly hate Manchester City because they're our closest title rivals. I do need to know who they're playing. So it also tells me that Man City are playing Wigan Athletic. Also gives me interesting photo spots nearby. Obviously, if I'm traveling for tourism, that would be interesting as well. And then also, it just gives me weather, okay? It knows I was in London last week, so weather in London would be interesting. It knows I'm currently in Dubai at the moment, beautiful temperature, but it also gives me, it knows that I'm flying to Vilnius and I'm flying through Warsaw, so it automatically just gives me the weather for those two places. Again, I haven't done a single search, it's proactively providing this information to me. And then when I land in Lithuania, it automatically gives me translation. Thankfully, you guys speak pretty good English, so I didn't have to try my hand at Lithuanian, but it's there if I need it. Also tells me the exchange rate and the current time. Pretty useful stuff. And then it also shows me nearby attractions. So I actually went and had an explore around the city as soon as I got here, based on these notifications, and had a beautiful walk around. Again, I didn't have to go and find a tourist map. I didn't have to search for anything. Google's like, hey, these places might be of interest to you. It also recommends interesting restaurants based on restaurants that I've eaten, or interesting bars. So last night we ended up in a whiskey bar. I'm a massive, whiskey fan. And, Google says, hey, if you like whiskey bars in New York or whiskey bars in Dubai, chances are here's a cool whiskey bar in Lithuania. But it also does some more useful things in a work context. So it's plugged into your calendar. So it knows where I'm supposed to be. So this is an example from South Africa a few weeks ago. We were running an event, and I had this event logged in my calendar that I needed to be there at 7 o'clock. So Google knows I need to be at this location at 7 o'clock, and it obviously knows where I am at the moment through the GPS on my device. So what Google then does is actually monitors in real time the traffic network of how the traffic is, is it building up, is it slowing down? And it will then send me a notification when I need to leave to make sure I get to my meeting on time. So if the traffic's really bad, it may give me a notification an hour and a half before I get there, even if it's just a 20-minute journey, saying, look, you need to leave now in order to make your conference on time. And if you think about that, that's incredibly complex stuff that computers can do a lot better than us as humans. And really, Google's trying to help you guys live your lives more efficiently, more effectively, use your time in a better way. And Google now is getting better all the time, so stuff like this is we're gonna carry on doing more and more interesting things like this. So again, if we just look back to 2005 and what we started with, and just some of I could stand here for 2 hours and tell you about all the cool stuff that we've done over the last 8 years, but it's amazing to see how far this technology has come, but also how much impact it's having on people's lives. So I think it's fair to say that maps, and especially digital maps, have really transformed our lives, and are transforming our lives, and are enabling us to save time, save money, and do more interesting things. And so Google actually wanted to look into this in a bit more detail to find out what impact geoservices actually have on the economy. And this isn't just Google Maps and Google Earth, it's all the satellite providers, all the satellite imagery, personal navigation devices, all of this information. So we actually commissioned a study to have a look at what the impact this was having on the economy, and the results are actually pretty profound and very interesting. So the first thing is, just to give you an idea of the size of the geo-services market, estimated around $150 to $270 billion, which is about a quarter of the global airline industry. Okay, it's pretty interesting. If you then take into effect the added value services that are created from all of this technology, it adds another $100 billion per year to that. So now getting up almost half the total revenues of the global airline industry, just to give you a reference of actually how big this industry is. But then the more interesting things are the impact it's starting to have on the economy and on society. So some estimates based on some calculations that 1.1 billion hours of travel time per year globally is saved by using geoservices, personal navigation devices, and maps. 1.1 billion hours of people's time not wasted, doing something more interesting, something more useful. And again, tied to that, about 3.5 billion liters of petrol, of gas, saved because people are either taking the most optimal route or they're deciding not to drive because the traffic is so bad. Again, huge impacts on the economy. Some other interesting things. So geoservices, lots of companies use it to basically increase their logistics capacity and be able to do things more cost effective. So savings to you guys as consumers by buying products, increased competition, has somewhere between 0.5 and $2.8 billion of value to the economy. Agriculture. Huge potential savings on agriculture by farmers being able to manage their farms and their land a lot more efficiently, by automating a lot of the things that they do through irrigation, by using satellite imagery and geoservices to monitor the state of their soil so they can try and get the most optimal use out of their land. And finally, emergency services. So this was just a study just looking at England in the UK, and the study estimated that at least minimum 152 lives per year were saved because of use of this digital technology for ambulances and response crew to be able to get to the location of an incident as quickly as possible. So again, geoservices have huge impact on the wider economy, trying to add value, save money, and help people live their lives more efficiently. So that's great at the macroeconomic level, but what about everyday businesses? What impact does it have on businesses? Well, we think, and I've been preaching this for a number of years, that maps and geolocation services really do have the power to be able to transform businesses. Why? Well, every business needs to have a digital location strategy. I've been, again, preaching this for years and years, but now it's more important than ever. No matter what your business is, no matter what you do, you're going to find yourself asking questions like these. Where are our customers? If we're going to run a marketing campaign, where should we target it? Should we target it at existing customers or new customers? Where are socioeconomic areas that we would want to be interested in? How can we optimize our mobile workforce? What's the best way to divide our region amongst sales reps? Where should we locate retail stores? Where are our competition based? Where are our customers? How can our customers locate us? And there's another million questions like that. And all of these questions can be answered by the power of using maps and location-based services. But there's another factor that is really, really important why every business needs to think about this. And I'm going to illustrate that through a quick game of Spot the Difference. So this is an image from the inauguration of Pope Benedict in 2005. So I want you to spot the difference between this and the next photo that I'll show from the inauguration from about a month ago of Pope Francis. So first one to spot the difference, just shout it out. You ready? Not much difference there, is there? Amazing. Every single person has a mobile device. They're taking photos, they're taking videos on Facebook, on Google+, on Twitter, sharing this moment. All these people, they're your customers, they're your consumers, they're your employees. All of them have these devices that have GPS, that know where they are. And all of this is a great opportunity for you guys as businesses to leverage a lot of this mobile technology, to connect with your customers, to connect with your consumers, or to provide your services as a business to your employees. And again, just to emphasize that, if you look at the growth rate, of devices. So at the moment, we're just at a crossover point in terms of there's more mobile devices being sold than desktops and laptops. But just look at the growth trajectory by 2015. And then think about, actually, at the moment, we've probably got maybe 1.5 billion of the 7 billion people on this planet that are even just connected. What about the other 5 billion? They're going to be connected, and they're going to be connected mobile first. And their mobile is going to have GPS, or it's going to be location aware. Huge opportunity for businesses to really now start thinking about digital location strategies. So how can we as Google help businesses? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how some of businesses are using Google Maps to really help improve their businesses, to provide better services, and to effectively increase your bottom line profits. Because when you get up and go to work in the morning, there's two things you think. One is, how can we make better services for our users and our customers? Secondly, how can we make more money? And Google Maps and our mapping platform that we license for businesses to use really help drive customer engagement, make better decisions, optimize people and assets, and build amazing applications. So let me just share with you a few examples of some companies and what they've done with Google Maps. So the first example is Tesco in the UK. This is a very recent campaign that Tesco did around Easter time, so a few weeks ago. And they wanted to run a campaign to really help engage customers and try and drive customers into their stores. So they used Google Maps API and Street View and embedded that within their website. And then they created a virtual Easter egg hunt. So you can see here they were actually overlaying Easter eggs within Street View and then asking users to find Easter eggs. And if you find Easter eggs, you can then get a coupon to go back into the store to basically, get a Cadbury's cream egg or get a small Easter egg. And again, this was one of those viral marketing campaigns. They saw huge amounts of engagement, users logging on, and it drove customers into that store. Very interesting out-of-the-box thinking of how can we create a buzz in the market? How can we create that brand awareness? How can we get Tesco being thought of as a cool company? And how can we get users into our stores? Done using a very interesting use of the Google Maps API and Street View. Next example was Mini in Stockholm. Really, really cool use case. So they created a location-based real-time game, again, to drive brand awareness about the launch of the new Mini. So I'm just going to roll a video now, which is a really cool video. Really, really interesting example of how you can use this technology to really engage with the users. Again, for this, I don't think we included in the study, the amount of people that maybe, took a week off work because they were running around Stockholm trying to win a Mini. But, really successful case of driving brand awareness. Next example is a company called Rightmove in the UK. This is a property portal and property website. So they've used maps for a long time because, of course, if you want to buy or rent a property, knowing where it is pretty important. But they're actually a very data-driven business. So they know how many hits they get to their website. They know how much revenue they get in terms of advertising and listings. So they calculate basically how much revenue they can gain by getting additional users to their website. And once they'd figured that out, they basically said, well, how can we drive as much usage to our website as possible? How can we get users spending as much time on our website as we can? So they developed this quite simple but quite powerful concept of draw a search using the Google Maps API. So users could go onto their website, they could just draw a polygon of places they're interested in, and then basically find out properties for rent or properties for sale within that area. And what they saw was immediately after this was launched, 15% increase in the numbers of users coming to their website. And that was great for them because they had their monetization strategy worked out, so they knew that the more users they get, the more their bottom line revenues increase. But they had very cool landing pages, so when you click on a property, it takes you through to that web page. The first thing you find is a street view image, so you can explore the area around you and see what that looks like. They then have maps beneath that show you the location of the closest transit stations and the locations of the closest schools, because all of these things are useful to you as a user. So again, very successful use case of using maps and having a location-based technology to really drive more users to their website. Next example is really around optimizing people and assets. So this is a utilities company. Sutton and East Surrey Water. They used one of our products called Google Maps Coordinate, which is a mobile workforce management solution. And they found just by using this technology that they dramatically improved the way that they communicate and manage their critical logistics. So they were doing a better job, but more importantly, they saw a 500% return on investment from investing in this technology to the benefits that they saw. Increased worker efficiency, increased optimization of jobs and routes, spending less on fuel. Really amazing way how these sorts of technologies can impact businesses to help them to, make more money, but secondly, invest more in creating amazing applications that they can provide to their end users. Final example is one of my favorites, is Nordic Track. So Nordic Track build running machines, and this is a great example of just the power that APIs can provide. So a few years ago, they called Google and spoke to one of our sales reps and said, hey, I'm calling from a company called Nordic Track. We build running machines. We'd like to embed Google Maps within our running machines. Can we do that? So our sales rep sort of said, well, yeah, you can. I don't quite know why you would want to embed Google Maps in your running machine, thinking how that would work. But yeah, there's a way that you can do that. Why would you want to do that? And they came back and said, well, imagine the ability to simulate an actual run anywhere on the planet. So we want to create this user experience. When the user steps onto the running machine, they are greeted with Google Earth or Google Maps, and they can zoom to anywhere in the world that they want to run. So if you want to run in the streets of San Francisco, or maybe you want to run around Hyde Park, or maybe you're feeling particularly energetic and you want to run up Mount Everest. It saves spending a lot of money on gear and frostbite, doesn't it? And so the user then has an experience where they draw a route. So let's say they draw a route around San Francisco. And then the length of that route is used to program the running machine for how far you want to run. But then more interestingly, within the Google Maps API, we have an elevation API. So you can give a route and you can get back the elevation profile. And that then changes the inclination of the running machine as you're running based on the route that you've chosen. So again, running through the streets of San Francisco, a little bit more hard work than running around Hyde Park in London. But then even more interestingly, in areas of the world where we have Street View, as you're running, it will then pan through the Street View imagery scenes to give you that feeling that you're actually running through the streets of San Francisco. So this example at the top here is actually taken from one of the Nordic Track running machines. And again, by leveraging the power of all this amazing technology that we've developed as Google and doing something that we as Google would never have thought. We would never have thought to put Google Maps in running machines, but they've created an amazing application, an amazing end user experience that's helping them drive more sales. So hopefully that's just given you some idea about the ways in which Google Maps can be used by businesses. Again, I could stand here for hours and tell you all the cool things that different companies around the world are doing with Google Maps. But now I just want to close by talking a little bit more about some of the things that we're working on this year and some of the things we're working on long term. Obviously, I can't share too much with you because we obviously like new products and new launches to be a surprise. But just to give you an idea on some of the areas we're focusing on. The first thing is really ground truth expansion. Ground truth is Google's kind of internal program to increase the quality of our mapping data. Back a number of years ago, we used to license data from a lot of third-party data providers, but doing that, we didn't have control of the data. We couldn't update it as quickly as we wanted. So what actually ground truth does is it uses latest satellite and aerial imagery, as well as things like Street View, to automatically extract all of the information that then goes into Google Maps. So we now have algorithms that run across Street View imagery that extract things like business logos, things like street names, whether it's a one-way street, two-way street. So we really focus on expanding this program to try and get our maps across the globe even better. Also, enhanced imagery. So obviously we just launched Street View here in Lithuania, but also providing more high-resolution imagery, more up-to-date imagery, more 45-degree imagery. We have indoor Street View as well, a program called Business Photos, where hotels, businesses, restaurants can take panoramas of the inside of their restaurants and tie that into Street View. So a lot more focus on expanded imagery. We're also doing some cool, new, interesting things about Street View. So again, when I was talking about the Grand Canyon, we now have Street View on backpacks. Well, actually now we also have Street View in your pocket. So the latest version of Android Jelly Bean, the camera has a function called photosphere. And what you can then do is actually take your own Street View imagery just by holding up and clicking around. So you create your own Street View. You can actually submit that to Google Maps to bake into maps.google.com. So if there are areas of the world that we haven't covered with Street View, you can do so with your phone. Also, increasing focus on mobile. I've talked quite a lot about mobile. Obviously, we all know how much mobile devices are increasing. You're going to see a lot more of us on the mobile front, both for consumers and both for developers. So watch this space. Mobile is a real area of focus. But also, we're actively working on all this technology to enable developer innovation by creating this amazing data sets and providing them through platforms and APIs. We really want to put the power in the hands of developers to take those and create really interesting end-user applications. So we're going to continue to do that, continue to provide all of these services through APIs and through platforms, so businesses, developers, individuals can take advantage of all of this technology to build really cool things that, like the Google Maps and running machines that we as Google would never think of doing. But also more 3D. So obviously Google Earth has provided us 3D imagery and buildings of the world for a long time. But more recently, we've developed a technology that enables us to automate the generation of 3D cities using oblique aerial imagery. So I'm just going to roll a quick video to show you that. So a couple of weeks ago, we recently, I think, released New York City. So if you download the latest version of Google Earth and fly to New York City, you can see our updated 3D model of the whole of New York. But the other reason why this is really important, because a lot of people see 3D as just sort of a nice to have, a bit gimmicky. But actually, by creating all of this data that sits behind this, this can enable us to do more interesting things. You know, self-driving cars. It's obviously something that Google is working very hard on. That needs huge amounts of data and huge amounts of imagery to work. So a lot of the technology that we're doing building 3D cities helps technology like self-driving cars. And also Google Glass. How many of you know about Google Glass? Pretty much everyone. So again, you know, Google Glass and the next platform shift to augmented reality, right? It requires you to have a 3D virtual representation of the world to be able to deliver these cool experiences. So for those of you who don't know what Google Glass is, I'm going to play you just a quick concept video of what an experience might be when Google Glass is a little bit more mature.
Meet me in front of Strand Books at 2. Oh man, really? Hey there, guy. Hey there, little guy. Sweet. Remind me to buy tickets for Monsieur Gano tonight. Where's the music section? Oh, yes, this is it. Is Paul here yet? Huh. Hey, dude. How's it going?
Want to go check out that new place I was telling you about?
Sure.
This truck's really good.
Hey, just a second. Cool.
Good to see you again.
Thanks, man.
Just got a new place in Oxford City.
See you, dude. Whoa, cool. Take a photo of this. Share it to my circles. Oh, I'm running late. Music, stop.
Hi, what's up?
Hey,
Hey.
you want to say something cool?
Yeah, sure. Is that a ukulele?
Yep. Okay, here goes.
That's beautiful.
And this sort of technology is actually coming quicker than we think. But again, it's why it's really important to have both, the physical world and a replication of that physical world in a virtual environment. When you put those two together and you can deliver that augmented reality experience, that is really when magic moments and amazing things start happening. And so I think we just announced last week that we're shipping sort of the first set of Google Glass to people who won their hashtag If I Had a Glass competition. So, this technology is actually going to be here a lot more quickly than we think. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it useful. And really, if there's one takeaway to go away from today, is to really think, you guys, how can you benefit from maps? How can you benefit from this location information in your personal lives, but also at work in businesses? And please come speak to us, ask me any questions you like, and we'll see how we can get you guys using Google Maps to do cool and interesting things. Thank you.